The air inside the Long Beach International Gymnasium in 1964 was thick with the scent of liniment and the collective breath of hundreds of martial arts practitioners. Bruce Lee, a young man of 23, with a physique that looked like it was carved from mahogany, stood in the center of a makeshift ring. He wasn't there to fight. Not yet. He was there to demonstrate something the Western world had rarely seen: the fluid, lethal efficiency of the nunchaku. The twin sticks, connected by a short length of chain, whistled through the air with a sound like a nesting hornet. To the onlookers, it was a blur of motion, a dance of wood and gravity that defied the eye. But in the front row sat the traditionalists, the men who had spent 40 years mastering the straight sword, the staff, and the spear. Among them was Master Toshiro Tanaka, a 7th-degree black belt whose reputation for rigidity was as famous as his striking power. Tanaka watched Bruce's demonstration with a growing sense of irritation. To him, the flamboyant movements of the young man from Hong Kong were nothing more than a circus act. He saw the way the crowd gasped as Bruce spun the sticks behind his back, catching them with surgical precision under his armpit, only to launch them forward again in a fraction of a heartbeat. Tanaka leaned over to his assistant and spoke loud enough for the nearby rows to hear. He called it a toy. He said that in a real confrontation, a man with a weapon that requires such constant movement would be cut down before he could even find his grip. He believed that the nunchaku was an ornament of the peasant classes, a tool for threshing rice that had no place in the hands of a true warrior. Bruce Lee, whose hearing was as sharp as his reflexes, did not stop his flow. He continued the demonstration, the nunchaku clicking against his forearms in a rhythmic cadence. But his eyes, dark and piercing, locked onto Tanaka for a fleeting second. It was a silent acknowledgement. Bruce knew that the greatest barrier to progress was not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge. He knew that Tanaka was trapped in a cage of tradition, a prisoner of the very forms that were supposed to set him free. When the demonstration ended, the applause was deafening, but Tanaka remained seated, his arms crossed over his starched white uniform. The tension in the room shifted from admiration to anticipation. Everyone knew the unspoken rules of the martial arts world in the 60s. If a master insulted your art, you didn't argue with words. You invited them to see the truth. Bruce Lee wiped a thin sheen of sweat from his forehead and walked to the edge of the mat. He didn't look angry. He looked interested. He looked like a scientist who had just found a fascinating new specimen to study. He bowed slightly to the older man, a gesture of respect that carried a hidden edge of challenge. He asked the master if he would like to test the toy. He asked if the master's sword, which had never tasted defeat in the dojo, could find a target that was as formless as water and as unpredictable as the wind. Tanaka stood up, his movements slow and deliberate, the weight of his experience visible in every step. He didn't take a wooden sword. He took a heavy oak staff, a weapon he had used to disarm dozens of opponents. He was the only popish flight. He believed that the reach of the staff would neutralize the speed of the sticks. He believed that 3 seconds would be enough to prove his point. Tanaka stepped onto the mat, the oak staff held in a classic middle guard. He was a man of granite, his base so solid it seemed rooted into the earth itself. The 500 witnesses in the gymnasium fell into a silence so absolute you could hear the distant hum of the ventilation system. Bruce Lee stood 3 meters away, the nunchaku hanging loosely from his right hand. He didn't take a stance. He didn't look like a man about to engage in a violent exchange. He looked like he was waiting for a bus. This lack of preparation, this absence of a formal guard, was the ultimate insult to a traditionalist like Tanaka. It suggested that the opponent wasn't even worth the effort of a ready position. Tanaka's jaw tightened. He announced that he would strike the lead shoulder. He was a man of honor. He would tell his opponent exactly where the blow was coming from, believing that even with the warning, Bruce would be too slow to react. Bruce simply nodded. He told the master to move whenever he was ready. He said that the mind is like a mirror. It should grasp nothing and refuse nothing. It should receive, but not retain. Tanaka didn't wait any longer. He exploded forward with a speed that belied his age. The oak staff whistled through the air, a horizontal strike aimed with bone-crushing force at Bruce's left shoulder. It was a perfect technique, a testament to 40 years of repetition. But as the staff reached the point of impact, Bruce wasn't there. He didn't jump back. He didn't retreat. He moved offline by a mere 3 inches, a lateral shift that allowed the staff to pass harmlessly through the space his body had occupied a millisecond before. In that same heartbeat, the toy in his hand came alive. The nunchaku didn't swing, it snapped. It was a kinetic explosion that started from Bruce's feet, traveled through his hips, and ended in the tip of the wooden stick. The sound wasn't a thud. It was a sharp, percussive crack. The end of the nunchaku wrapped around the oak staff, the chain acting like a snare. Before Tanaka could even register that he had missed his target, he felt a violent jerk. His own momentum, combined with Bruce's redirection of force, pulled the staff from his grip. The heavy oak weapon clattered to the floor, sliding across the polished wood. But Bruce wasn't finished. As the staff fell, the nunchaku unwound and hovered, perfectly still, less than an inch from Tanaka's temple. The master froze. He could feel the air displaced by the weapon's proximity. He could see the grain of the wood in the stick. He realized that if Bruce had allowed the motion to continue for even another half-second, the toy would have ended the conversation permanently. 3 seconds had passed since Tanaka first moved. The master's hands were still empty, held in the air, where his weapon used to be. His face, which had been a mask of arrogant certainty, was now pale with shock. He looked at the nunchaku, then at the young man holding it. Bruce Lee's expression hadn't changed. There was no triumph in his eyes, no gloating. He simply retracted the weapon, catching it under his arm with a soft click. He told the master that a tool is only as effective as the mind that directs it. He said that a weapon is not a toy, and a toy is not a weapon. There is only the intent of the warrior. The silence in the gymnasium persisted, heavy and suffocating. Tanaka looked down at his empty hands, then at the oak staff lying 3 meters away. For the first time in his life, his internal compass had been shattered. He had lived by the philosophy that size, reach, and traditional weaponry were the pillars of combat. He believed that the old ways were the only ways because they had survived the test of time. But in 3 seconds, he had encountered a reality that didn't care about his lineage or his titles. He looked at Bruce Lee, who was now standing completely relaxed, his hands at his sides. Tanaka asked how it was possible. He asked how a peasant's tool could disarm a master of the staff. Bruce walked toward him, picking up the oak staff and handing it back with a respectful bow. He told the master that he had been fighting the nunchaku, but he should have been fighting the man. He explained that Tanaka's mind was fixed on the weapon, and because it was fixed, it was slow. He said that the nunchaku is not a separate object. It is an extension of the nervous system. When you use a weapon, you must not feel that you are holding it. You must feel that it is part of your hand, moving with the same spontaneity as a blink or a breath. Bruce then demonstrated the concept. He took the staff from Tanaka and held it lightly. He told the master to try and touch his chest with a simple finger. Tanaka, still reeling, but curious, reached out. Before his finger could travel 6 inches, the staff moved. It wasn't a block. It was a subtle redirection of space. Bruce didn't use strength. He used timing. He told the master that the mistake of traditional arts is the obsession with the way things should look. Masters spend decades perfecting the angle of a wrist or the placement of a heel, but they forget the why behind the movement. They become like the man pointing at the moon. They focus on the finger and miss all the heavenly glory. Tanaka listened, his pride slowly dissolving into a profound hunger for understanding. He realized that his 30 years of training had been a process of accumulation, but Bruce was practicing a process of elimination. While Tanaka was adding more forms and more techniques, Bruce was stripping away everything that was unnecessary. Bruce told him that the best fighter is not the one who knows 1,000 strikes, but the one who can adapt to any situation without a moment's thought. He said that you must be like water. Water can flow, or it can crash. It can fit into a cup or a teapot. It has no shape, yet it can wear away the hardest stone. Tanaka looked at his students, who were watching from the sidelines. He saw the confusion in their eyes, the same confusion he had felt moments ago. He turned back to Bruce and asked him to show them more. He asked him to explain the principle of the intercepting fist. Bruce smiled. He told them that martial arts is not about killing, it's about the honest expression of the human body. He said that to express yourself honestly, you must first know yourself. And to know yourself, you must be willing to die to your old ways every single day. Bruce Lee began to move across the mat, his footsteps silent, his body appearing to float above the wooden floor. He called for 4 volunteers from Tanaka's senior students. These were men in their prime, conditioned for power and endurance. He told them to surround him and attack simultaneously, using any method they chose. He didn't want a choreographed demonstration. He wanted a test of reaction. The students hesitated, looking at Tanaka. The master nodded, his eyes fixed on Bruce. The 4 men moved into position, forming a tight square around the smaller man. The crowd held its collective breath again. This was the nightmare scenario for any fighter. Multiple attackers in close quarters. In traditional karate or aikido, there were set patterns for dealing with such a situation, but they often relied on the attackers moving one by one. Bruce told them to come all at once. When the signal was given, the 4 students lunged. One went for a low tackle, 2 threw high punches, and the 4th attempted a grappling hold from behind. In the chaos of that second, Bruce Lee disappeared. He didn't move away from the center. He moved through the gaps. He used a series of short, explosive bursts of speed that made him look like a flickering image on a film reel. He struck the first student with a side kick that sent him reeling back 5 feet. He trapped the second student's arm and used it as a shield against the third. And the 4th student, the grappler, found himself grabbing empty air as Bruce spun away, delivering a palm strike to the man's chest that halted his momentum instantly. It was over in less than 5 seconds. None of the students were hurt, but all of them were out of position, their balance destroyed. Bruce stood back in the center, his breathing still rhythmic and calm. He told them that the secret to fighting multiple opponents is not to fight 4 men, but to fight 1 man 4 times. He explained that you must never let yourself be surrounded in your mind. You must move so that your enemies obstruct each other. You must become the eye of the storm, the point of stillness around which the chaos revolves. He looked at Tanaka and asked if he still thought the nunchaku was a toy. The master bowed deeply, his forehead nearly touching the mat. He said that he had been blind. He said that he had mistaken the tool for the art. Bruce reached out and helped the master to his feet. He told him that there is no such thing as a superior style, only a superior individual. Bruce reached out. He said that a style is a cage that prevents you from seeing the truth of the opponent. If you follow a style, you are trying to fit the world into your box. But the world is too big for any box. You must be formless. You must be able to change as the situation changes. If the opponent is fast, you must be faster. If he is strong, you must be soft. If he is still, you must be the movement that shatters his stillness. Tanaka asked Bruce where he could learn this philosophy. Bruce told him that it wasn't something to be learned, but something to be unlearned. He invited the master to his school in Chinatown, but with one condition: he must leave his black belt at the door. He must come with the mind of a beginner, a white belt mind, because only an empty cup can be filled. The demonstration at the Long Beach Gymnasium became the catalyst for a radical shift in Master Tanaka's life. For weeks after the encounter, he sat in his own dojo, watching his students perform the same katas they had practiced for years. He saw the rigidity, the choreographed nature of their movements, and he finally understood Bruce's critique. They were practicing dry land swimming. They were becoming experts at a dance that had no relation to the fluid, messy, and unpredictable reality of a real fight. Tanaka realized that he had spent his life building a fortress of tradition, but that fortress had become his prison. He decided to accept Bruce's invitation. He traveled to the small, unassuming gymnasium in Los Angeles' Chinatown. When he arrived, he didn't see the gleaming trophies or the formal portraits he was used to. He saw a laboratory. There were heavy bags of different weights, speed bags, and primitive weightlifting equipment. There were books on biomechanics, fencing, and Western boxing scattered on a side table. Bruce was there, wearing a simple tank top and sweatpants, dripping with perspiration as he worked a wooden dummy. He greeted Tanaka not as a rival master, but as a fellow seeker of truth. Bruce told him that today they would work on the concept of economy of motion. He explained that most martial artists waste 70% of their energy on unnecessary tension and telegraphing. He showed Tanaka a simple lead punch. In traditional karate, the punch started from the hip, with a loud shout and a dramatic rotation of the body. Bruce showed him a punch that started from the shoulder, with no wind-up and no warning. It was the 1-inch punch. Bruce stood in front of a heavy bag and placed his fist an inch away. Without moving his feet, he delivered a strike that made the 150-pound bag fly backward, hitting the ceiling with a violent thud. Tanaka was speechless. He had seen power before, but never power generated from such a short distance, with so little visible effort. Bruce told him that power does not come from muscle. It comes from the coordination of the entire body. It comes from the snap of the hips, the push of the feet, and the relaxation of the arm until the moment of impact. He said that tension is the enemy of speed. If you are tense, you are slow. If you are relaxed, you are explosive. He told Tanaka to try it. For the next 4 hours, the 70-year-old master struggled to unlearn the habits of a lifetime. He found himself trying to muscle the punch, trying to use the strength of his shoulders. Bruce would gently correct him, telling him to let his arm hang like a piece of rope. He told him that the strike should be like a whip, not a hammer. By the end of the session, Tanaka delivered a punch that, while not as powerful as Bruce's, had a snap he had never felt before. He felt a surge of excitement he hadn't experienced since his first day of training as a boy. Bruce told him that he was beginning to see. He was beginning to move away from the form and toward the function. As the months passed, the relationship between Bruce Lee and Master Tanaka deepened into a profound friendship. Tanaka became a regular fixture at the Chinatown school, often seen practicing alongside students 40 years his junior. He didn't mind the lack of formality. In fact, he embraced it. He found that by stripping away the ceremonial trappings of his rank, he was able to connect with the essence of combat in a way he never had before. Bruce, in turn, respected the old man's discipline and his willingness to humble himself. One afternoon, while they were resting after a grueling sparring session, Tanaka asked Bruce about the nunchaku again. He admitted that he still struggled to see how such a chaotic weapon could be mastered. Bruce laughed and picked up the sticks. He told Tanaka that the nunchaku is a teacher of flow. If you fight the weapon, it will hit you. If you try to control it with force, it will rebel. You must move with it, allowing its momentum to dictate your own. He explained that this is the secret to life as well. Most people spend their lives fighting the flow of events, trying to force the world to be what they want it to be. They are like a man trying to push a river, but the wise man becomes the river. He adapts to the rocks and the bends, and because he doesn't resist, he eventually reaches the sea. Bruce then showed Tanaka a more advanced application of the weapon. He told the master to attack him with a wooden sword, but this time, he wanted Tanaka to try to actually hit him. He wanted the master to use all his skills. Tanaka hesitated, then nodded. He took a bouquet and moved into a high guard. He launched a vertical strike, a split the skull blow. Bruce didn't move his feet. He allowed the sword to come within inches of his head before snapping the nunchaku upward. The wooden stick didn't just block the sword, it caught it. With a flick of his wrist, Bruce used the chain to trap the blade and redirected the force downward. The sword was pulled into the floor, and before Tanaka could recover, the second stick of the nunchaku was resting against his throat. Bruce told him that the nunchaku is the ultimate weapon of interception. It allows you to use the opponent's energy against them with minimal effort. He said that this is the jeet, in jeet kundo, the intercepting. You don't wait for the attack to finish. You meet it as it is born. You destroy the opponent's intent before it becomes a reality. Tanaka looked at the weapon and smiled. He realized that it wasn't a toy, and it wasn't just a weapon. It was a metaphor for a mind that is free from fixed patterns. He thanked Bruce for the lesson, not just in fighting, but in living. He said that he had come to the school to learn how to strike, but he had ended up learning how to see. The news of Master Tanaka's defection to Bruce Lee's school sent shockwaves through the traditional martial arts community in California. Many of Tanaka's contemporaries felt betrayed. They saw his association with the upstart from Hong Kong as a slap in the face to their heritage. A group of 3 high-ranking masters from San Francisco decided to travel to Los Angeles to confront Tanaka and challenge Bruce Lee. They arrived at the Chinatown school on a Tuesday evening, their expressions grim and their uniforms impeccable. They demanded to speak with Tanaka, accusing him of abandoning his ancestors. Tanaka, who was in the middle of a stretching routine, stood up and faced them with a calm that unsettled them. He told them that he hadn't abandoned his ancestors. He had finally started to understand them. He said that the ancestors were innovators in their own time, but their descendants had turned their innovations into stagnant rituals. He invited his former peers to watch a sparring session. The three masters refused, demanding a formal challenge match instead. They wanted to prove that their pure styles were superior to Bruce's mongrel system. Bruce Lee stepped forward, his eyes bright with the prospect of a real test. He told them that he didn't care about styles or purity. He cared about what worked. He agreed to the challenge, but on his terms. No rules, no rounds, and the fight would continue until one man conceded. The first master, a practitioner of northern Shaolin, stepped onto the mat. He was fast and elegant, his movements full of high kicks and sweeping arm gestures. Bruce watched him for 10 seconds, then ended the match in 5. He didn't use any of the master's own language. He used a simple, direct boxing jab, followed by a low leg sweep. The master fell hard, his elegance shattered by the brutal efficiency of the strike. The second master, a specialist in iron palm, tried to use his strength to overwhelm Bruce. He moved in close, attempting to deliver a crushing blow to Bruce's ribs. Bruce didn't retreat. He used a Wing Chun trapping technique to pin the man's arms and delivered a series of rapid-fire chain punches to the man's chest. The master backed away, gasping for air, defense rendered useless by Bruce's speed. The third master, seeing his companions defeated, hesitated. He looked at Tanaka, then at Bruce. He realized that they weren't fighting a man. They were fighting an evolution. He declined the match, bowing to Bruce and admitting that there was more to combat than he had realized. Bruce didn't gloat. He told them that they were all fighting the same battle, the battle against their own limitations. He said that the truth is outside of all patterns. He invited them to stay and train, telling them that the door to truth is always open to those who are willing to walk through it. The three masters left, their worldviews shaken, but their minds beginning to open. Tanaka watched them go, a small smile on his face. He told Bruce that it is harder to change a mind than it is to break a bone. Bruce nodded and said that is why the greatest victory is not over the opponent, but over the self. By 1970, Bruce Lee's influence had begun to transcend the martial arts world and enter the mainstream of Hollywood. But despite his growing fame, he never stopped his private training with Tanaka. The old master had become one of the few people Bruce could truly talk to about the deeper philosophical implications of his work. One evening, Bruce showed Tanaka a draft of a book he was writing, which would later become The Tao of Jeet Kune Do. He had filled the pages with sketches of human anatomy, diagrams of force vectors, and quotes from Zen masters and Western philosophers. He told Tanaka that he wanted to create a system that wasn't a system. He wanted to give people the tools to find their own way, rather than forcing them to follow his. Tanaka read a passage where Bruce wrote about the art of dying. Bruce explained that to be a great warrior, you must be comfortable with the idea of your own end. If you fear death, you will always be hesitant in combat. But if you accept it, you are truly free. You can move with total commitment, without the burden of self-preservation holding you back. Tanaka, who was nearing 80, nodded slowly. He said that he had spent his life trying to avoid defeat, but Bruce had taught him that defeat is just another teacher. He said that he was no longer afraid of losing his reputation or his life, because he had found something more valuable, the truth of the present moment. Bruce told him that the present moment is the only place where life exists. Most people live in the past, ruminating on their mistakes, or in the future, worrying about what might happen. But the warrior lives in the now. In the now, there is no fear, no ego, and no hesitation. There was only the action and the reaction, perfectly synchronized. He picked up the nunchaku one last time and performed a slow, deliberate movement. He told Tanaka that this was the highest level of mastery, to move with such simplicity that it looks like you are doing nothing at all. He said that the ultimate goal is to return to the innocence of a child, but with the wisdom of a master. To be able to play with the nunchaku as if it were a toy, but to have the power of the universe behind every strike. Tanaka looked at his friend and realized that Bruce Lee was more than just a martial artist. He was a revolutionary thinker who was using the medium of combat to explore the very nature of human existence. The legacy of that afternoon in Long Beach and the years of training that followed lived on long after Bruce Lee's untimely passing in 1973. Master Tanaka continued to teach at the Chinatown School for another decade, becoming a bridge between the old world and the new. He never went back to his traditional gi or his formal titles. He remained a student of the way until the day he died. He often told his own students the story of the day he called the nunchaku a toy. He told them how a 3-second encounter had dismantled 40 years of ego. He told them that the greatest weapon a person can possess is not made of wood or steel, but of a mind that is open and a heart that is courageous. He would show them the nunchaku, moving it with a grace that seemed to defy his aging body. He would tell them that the weapon is a mirror. If you are angry, the weapon will be violent. If you are confused, the weapon will be chaotic. But if you are at peace, the weapon will be a poem. He reminded them that Bruce Lee didn't teach them how to fight. He taught them how to be real. He taught them that the toy was just a tool to help them discover the greatness within themselves. And somewhere in the archives of martial arts history, the story of the master and the nunchaku remains as a testament to the power of humility. It serves as a reminder that mastery is not a destination, but a continuous process of shedding what is false to reveal what is true. It reminds us that when we are willing to let go of our black belts and our certainties, we open ourselves up to a world of infinite possibility. The sound of the nunchaku snapping in the air is the sound of a mind breaking free from its chains. It is the sound of the truth delivered in 3 seconds that changed everything. The final lesson Tanaka shared with his senior students was about the concept of empty space. He told them that in the 3 seconds it took Bruce to disarm him, the most important thing wasn't the movement of the nunchaku, but the space Bruce created. He explained that a master doesn't just react to an attack, he controls the space in which the attack happens. He told them that Bruce Lee lived in the gap between thoughts, the silent space where intuition resides. Tanaka said that most people's minds are crowded with noise, like a room filled with old furniture. But Bruce's mind was an empty room, and because it was empty, it could contain everything. He encouraged his students to seek that emptiness in their own lives. He told them that when you face a challenge, whether it's a punch in a ring or a crisis in your life, you must not meet it with a crowded mind. You must meet it with the stillness of the void. He said that this was the true meaning of be water. Water doesn't think about the rock, it simply finds the space around it. In your town, he told them that if they could master their own internal space, they would never be defeated, even if they never picked up a weapon again. He ended his final class by picking up the same nunchaku Bruce had used years before. He didn't spin it or perform any flashy moves. He simply held it in his hand and breathed. He said that the toy had taught him everything he needed to know about the universe. He said that the 2 sticks represent the dualities of life, light and dark, win and lose, life and death. And the chain that connects them is the Tao, the balance that holds everything together. He bowed to his students, a humble white belt in a 90-year-old body, and walked off the mat for the last time. The story of Bruce Lee and the master who called his weapon a toy is more than a martial arts legend. It is a blueprint for human growth. It challenges us to look at our own traditional ways, our own fixed beliefs, and our own arrogant certainties. It asks us if we are willing to be humbled by the truth, even if it comes in the form of a 3-second lesson from an unexpected teacher. It reminds us that the path to mastery is always open, provided we are willing to check our egos at the door and embrace the white belt mindset. Because in the end, we are all just students, learning to move with the flow of a world that is constantly changing, trying to find our own way to be like water.